All right, good afternoon, and welcome to the second session after lunch. Hopefully everybody's still awake. We are here to get some more knowledge about scoping smarter with Entra ID. So please welcome to the stage Philip from Montreal.
All right. Hello, everybody. I'm Philip Boucher from Montreal, Senior Consultant at Amaris Consulting. I'm very excited to be there in front of you guys and be able to present this subject, which I think is very interesting to a lot of people. Today's agenda, first we're going to start looking at what problem exactly do we want to solve here. We're going to look as well at some prerequisites and integration we need to first put in place between Microsoft Entra ID and Jamf Pro. And after that, once we have that in place, we're going to look at two solutions. The first one being an advanced workflow using the Jamf Pro API, an extension attribute, and smart groups. And the second one being the new native option that's available as of Jamf Pro 11.18. After that, we're going to look at a few real-world scenarios on how you can apply that. And at the end of this session, I'll give you all the resources that you need, the slides, the script, everything, and hopefully we have time for some questions. So to start off, what problem are we solving here? Well, Entra ID-based scoping is really important because we want our policies, our profiles, our apps to target people and not just devices. And Microsoft Entra ID is the identity source of truth that's used most by Jamf Pro customers. So Jamf Pro initially was built mostly for devices and not necessarily people. So the options that we had until recently for scoping in an Entra ID-based way were mostly the scoping limitations, but that requires the Mac local username to be in sync, well, to be exactly matching actually the one in Jamf Pro that's assigned to a device. I'll show you that more in detail. But there's also the method with self-service login where people can log into the self-service with their Microsoft account, and then as a result, even if the username locally doesn't match with the one in the Entra ID one in Jamf Pro, it would still work, but that's just for policies. So, and finally, we have our good old static groups. They are great, but they do require you to manually make changes. So if someone leaves the company or there has a new device, then you have to make manual changes, which is not the best. So what I mean by, for scoping limitations, what I mean by the local username has to match the one in Entra ID, the one in Jamf Pro, I mean, is you can see on the right, that's the username for my Mac, and then we can see on the left my Mac in Jamf Pro. Under user and location, there is my Microsoft Entra ID username. So those two would have to match in order for scoping limitations to work, but that's not always the case. And then if you allow your users to set their username as they want, it's very hard to change afterwards, so not the best. And then the self-service login method can work too, but like I said, it's just for policies, and when a user opens the self-service, they would have to go and log in there. So once again, not necessarily the best. So those options are kind of limited in practice because also the compliance, the blueprints, the Jamf app catalog, all those new features, they don't support scoping limitations. They only work with smart groups. And once again, you know, the static groups require manual and are error prompt. So how do we fix this? Like, what are the solutions? Well, before we talk about any solutions, we have to implement a couple of integrations in between Jamf Pro and Microsoft Entra ID. So I'm going to show you how to configure those with some pre-recorded demos. Some of you guys might already have those integrations in place, and so I'll keep this short, no more than 10 minutes. But for those that don't have it, it will show you exactly how to configure it, and I'll also explain why we need to configure those. So just to explain, the goal of those integrations between Jamf Pro and Microsoft ID is so that we can achieve this right here. You know, we want to have for each computers or mobile devices under user and location for that computer, I want to have the Entra ID informations filled up here. You know, I want to have the Entra ID username, the owner of that Mac assigned in that section, and also, yeah, so that's pretty much the goal here. So how can we collect user information from Entra ID? We need two key integrations for this. So first, we need the cloud identity provider integration. And then the second one is we need to make a little change to the way inventory collection works. So let's start off with the cloud identity provider integration. This is what will allow Jamf Pro to communicate with Microsoft Entra ID to query user information as well as group memberships in Entra ID. To do this integration, you simply need an account with Global Administrator. And also, once we got that in place, I'll show you how you can test and make sure that everything works. So here's a quick video on how to do this. First, we need to go in Settings in Jamf Pro, and then Cloud Identity Provider. You're going to select New top right. And we're going to select, in most cases, it will be Entra ID. I know there's Entra ID GCC High, but that applies normally to like governmental organizations. So in your case, just select Entra ID. That redirects you to log in with a Microsoft account, which has to be a global administrator. Here it shows you some permissions. Those are actually the permissions that the Azure app registration that's going to do the link between Jamf Pro and Entra ID needs. Once you've done those few clicks, that's it. The app registration has been created in the backend. I'm setting up a display name here, and I'm checking those boxes. You don't necessarily have to check all of them. Even if you were to not check them, the integration would still work. I'm also reviewing the mappings, which I leave as default, which in the vast majority of case will be what you need. And so I'm not going to explain each of the three boxes that I checked here, but I'll explain one which is important, the transitive membership lookups. So what that means is that by checking this box, when there's going to be queries to look at group memberships, it's not just going to look at direct group membership, but it's going to look for like not just direct group membership. So like let's say, for example, I'm part of the IT team group in Entra ID. A direct membership lookup would show that I'm just part of the IT team. Okay, but let's say the IT team group is part of the all employees group, and the all employees group is part of the company global group. So with a transitive lookup, it's going to show that I'm part of all three of these groups. That's basically what it means here. So once you get that set up, there's a test button in the Cloud Identity Provider configuration. You can use that test button, and then you can put like a username, and you can also put a group to do a query and test if Jamf Pro is able to query like Entra ID and confirm it can pull all the Microsoft Entra ID information, as well as confirm a group membership for a user. So that's it for the first integration, the Cloud Identity Provider. Now the second thing we need to ensure is is basically just a box that you need to check. You need to make sure that collect user and location information from directory services is enabled in the inventory collection setting for both computers and mobile devices. So why do we need this? It's basically because when a computer or a mobile device submits inventory. So in most organizations, by default, it's 1 week for computers, and for mobile devices, by default, it's 1 day. But in most organizations, it's going to be people put it to 1 day as well, so that the update inventory happens every day. And when this update inventory happens, it's at this moment that basically, so when it happens about 1 every day, this setting is going to tell Jamf Pro to query Entra ID during that process. So it's at the moment that there is an update inventory that the informations from Entra ID are going to be queried by Jamf Pro. So let's say I get added to the finance group in Entra ID today. That means the next time there is an inventory update on my computer, Jamf Pro is going to detect now that I'm part of that finance group, and that's going to be updated in the Jamf Pro site. So yeah. How to configure this is very simple. You go in your Jamf Pro settings, you go in computer management, and then there is the inventory collection setting, and you make sure to check that box right here because it's not checked by default. And it's the exact same thing for mobile devices. It's just that in settings, you go in the device management section, and you check this box, and you save. So now that Jamf Pro is able to collect user information from Entra ID, we need to actually assign users to devices, right? So there are multiple ways to do this. In this presentation, I'm just going to focus on the most automated approach, in my opinion, that is going to cover computers and mobile devices, no matter if they are enrolled through automated device enrollment or user-initiated enrollment. So to do that, once again, we do need another integration in place. And this integration that we need to put in place is SAML-based SSO for enrollment. So there is that new integration as well, the OIDC SSO that works with Jamf accounts. I'm not talking about this one. It's really just the SAML one that we need. The reason that we need to put that integration in place is simply to enable users to authenticate with their Microsoft account during enrollment. And when they sign in with their account at enrollment, that's going to automatically assign their Entra ID user to the device in Jamf Pro. So to do that, you simply need one of the following roles in Entra ID. So be an application administrator, cloud application administrator, or application owner. And here's a quick video on how to set that up. So in Azure, I'm going to look for enterprise applications. And I'm going to create a new application. And there's already a Jamf Pro application that exists. So I'll select this one. I'm going to do create. And once I got that, I'll set up the single sign-on portion of the enterprise application. I'll select SAML because that's the authentication method we're using. And then there's just 3 things you need to change here. So the identifier, the reply URL, and the sign-on URL. So all you have to do is, there's a little pattern below. You can see just exactly I'm copying that pattern. The only thing that I'm changing is that I'm changing like the star or the subdomain to my Jamf Pro instance. In my case, it's pboucher NFR. If you're on your Jamf Pro console on the web and you look at your URL, you're going to be able to find that easily. So once I got those 3 things done, and this is based on the Microsoft documentation, I'm simply going to save. It's going to ask me if I want to do a test. I'm going to say no, I don't need that for now, it's all good. I'll test later. And I simply need to copy one thing from here, which is the app federation metadata URL, because I need that to put that in the Jamf Pro integration. Back in Jamf Pro, we go to settings, and then single sign-on. I don't have anything enabled for now. All I need to do is to enable the SAML authentication, set Entra ID as my identity provider, paste that metadata URL that I copied earlier. Then I'm going to set the Jamf Pro user mapping to email. That's optional. It depends on each cases. And finally, what's really important, though, is to check this box, the single sign-on options for Jamf Pro, and enable single sign-on or authentication during enrollment. And I'm going to leave that to any identity provider user because I want all users to be able to authenticate at enrollment. When we look back in the enterprise application under users and groups, there's nothing. So we might think, okay, it's not assigned to anybody, but no, all we have to do is set assignment required to no. What that means is that since assignment is not required, that means it's actually getting assigned to everybody, which is what we want. So in today's, like all those integrations that I'm doing, I'll always apply it to just all of the Entra ID users because it's simpler, but you could also be more granular and apply just to a specific group in Entra ID if you wanted. All right, so now that we have this in place, we can already see what will be the experience for someone that manually enrolls their Mac, so with user-initiated enrollment. And it's going to look just like this. So basically, the first thing they have to do is on the web, search for yourinstance.jamfcloud.com/enroll, and they're going to land on that page right here. That's going to ask them to log in with their Microsoft account. If they are not able to log into their Microsoft account, they're not going to be able to enroll. Just a side note. But after they log in through here, the next page they will see is this one. So they will see the assign to user page with their email already pre-filled in here. All they have to do is click enroll, get enrolled in Jamf Pro, and just like that, that's going to automatically pre-fill their Entra ID information in that user and location section for their corresponding Mac. So that's for user-initiated enrollment. We have that result now. But for automated device enrollment. So, the one that you enrolled through Apple Business Manager, we need one more thing, which is, at least in the approach that I'm taking, so it's enrollment customization. Enrollment customization is going to allow us to add an additional custom PAN during the setup assistant when the user is getting enrolled, and that custom PAN will ask user to log in with their Microsoft account. So to do that, once again, just a quick video, we go in settings, we go in global, and then there is enrollment customization. I'm going to go and create a new one. And you could use this to add as many custom PANs as you wanted. They don't have to be a single sign-on one. It could be just to showcase some text to your users, but in that case, I'm simply using it as a single sign-on PAN. So I'm going to click on Add PAN. It's required to put a display name. You can put whatever you want. That's not going to be shown to the user. And then you select single sign-on authentication, and that's all you have to do. Just add and leave it to any identity provider users, save. And that's not the end of it. We simply have to go in our pre-stage enrollment and assign it to the pre-stage enrollment. Because if it's not assigned in here, the pre-stage enrollment being kind of like an enrollment profile, you could say. If it's not in there, then it's not going to be applied. And that would be the same thing for mobile devices. So here is what the automated device enrollment experience is going to look like now. So when a user opens up a brand new Mac for the first time, or if there's a Mac that you wipe and then you re-enroll and you land on the setup assistant, first thing you do, right, is you select your language, your region, then you have to connect to the Wi-Fi, then you're presented with that remote management screen, and right after that, you're going to see a screen like this, where the user has to log in with their Microsoft account. And as a result of successfully logging in with their Microsoft account at that point, this information, once again, is going to be pre-filled under user and location for their Mac. So that's it for automated device enrollment. Like I said earlier, there are multiple other methods that you could use to get that desired result of having the Entra ID user information pre-filled under the user and location section of the Mac. For example, the Jamf recon with the end username option, whatever you set as the username, that's going to be populated as the username under user and location. So that's one method. You can also retrieve from the Jamf Connect. Some people do that. They retrieve the username, and then they populate that in Jamf Pro with a script or with some APIs. You can also manually set it. If you have like very few devices, you can do that. And then you can also use the Jamf Pro inventory preload. So whatever method works best for you, go that way. I showed what, in my opinion, is the most automated one. All right, so we have everything in place now. We have all the prerequisites that we need to look at the actual solutions. The first one we're going to look at is an advanced workflow using the Jamf Pro API. And also it uses smart groups and extension attributes. So the workflow's logic goes as following. We need to create an extension attribute either for computers or mobile devices to store the Entra ID group membership that the user is member of. Secondly, we need to create a Jamf Pro API role and client that's going to be used for the API calls during the script. Then we add our script to Jamf Pro. There's a few variables that we need to change. We add the script after that to a policy, execute it on a Mac. We confirm that the extension attribute is populated, everything is good. And after that, you can scope that policy if you're satisfied to all your computers. And we create the smart group using the extension attribute as a criteria. And one thing I forgot to mention is that in the presentation now, for the next few minutes, I'm really going to focus on that workflow, but for computers only. And at the end, I'll also quickly mention how we can make the workflow work for mobile devices. So it's two separate scripts, actually, and I'll provide those, both of you, at the end. So once again, let's go just one step at a time with a quick demo. In this demo, I'm going to create the extension attribute that will be used to store all the group memberships from Entra ID. So I simply give it the name Microsoft Entra ID group membership. And the only thing I change here actually is extension attributes. I'm going to do the same thing for mobile devices. OK, no. So yeah, you can do the same thing for mobile devices. But one detail here is that the only thing that I'm changing is the inventory display. The inventory display is when I look at a Mac, in Jamf Pro, I can see there's the general section, there's user location, and there's an extension attribute section. So I'm specifying show this extension attribute in that extension attribute section. And for this workflow to work, this is mandatory because the API calls rely on us setting that up. So just a quick note. Then the second thing is we're going to create the API role in the client. So under system, then API roles and client, I'm first going to create my API role. I'll put a title that really explain what it does, and then an API role is simply it's a set of permissions that will be used by an API client. So all we're doing here is a set of permissions. That's all we're defining. In this case, I'm putting read computers, update computers, and read LDAP servers. So then once I have my role, I am able to create my client. Once again, I'll put a title that explains clearly what it does. I'll then assign it that API role, so those permissions. I'll leave the time to 60 seconds for the access token lifetime, and I'll enable it. Then once you save, you can generate the client ID and most importantly the client secret. Well, both are important, but I recommend to then note that on the side temporarily until you go and actually update that in your script. And one quick note is that I'm leaving the access token lifetime to 60 seconds because this script is pretty fast, but in some other workflows you might want to make it bigger, or you can make it bigger even in that case, so that during that 1 minute, that's during that lifetime that API calls can use the token, So yeah, just a side note. Why those permissions? Well, the read computers permission is going to be used because in the script we have to read what is the username under user location that's assigned to the computer. Secondly, we have update computers. We need that permission to update the computer extension attribute value, the one that's storing the group memberships from Entra ID. And finally, the read LDAP servers permission is what allows us to do the API call to retrieve the Entra ID group membership, to test that, okay, this email is part of this Entra ID group. So up next, how can we deploy this? Well, when we have the script, we can simply go ahead and create it in Jamf Pro. Like I said, that's going to be given to you at the end. And then this script is going to collect Entra ID group memberships using the Jamf Pro API. So I'll paste it here. At the beginning of the script, there's a little explanation on how to use it, but really all you have to do is, all you have to modify is the values, the variables in this section. The define your variables, that's all you have to edit. After that, you have nothing else to change in the script. So the client ID, the API client ID and the API client secret that I noted earlier, I'm setting those here in the script. After that, the way this workflow works is that it's not going to collect all groups that the owner of a Mac is member of. It's just going to collect membership for the ones that we predefine here. In this case, I only have 3, but you can put as much as you want. It's just going to collect membership for those groups that I define here. And finally, the third thing that I need to define is the extension attribute name that I created earlier. In my case, I named it Microsoft Entra ID Group Membership, but you can name it however you want. Just make sure that in the script, the extension attribute name variable has the corresponding value. Yeah. Good. So like I said, there's a bunch of other stuff after that. No need to touch it. You can just save. And after that, I'm copying the name of the script just to go faster and create a policy with that same name. I'll put the trigger to recurring check-in. I'll put it to once every day. So because this policy is going to execute once every day on my Mac, and every time it updates, then it's going to go and confirm, is my Entra ID user, which is the owner of this Mac, is it a member of those groups that I want to know membership for? And that's it. It's going to happen once every day. After that, let's see how we can create smart computer groups based off that. So first of all, just before we do this, I'm going to go in the policy. I'm going to go in the logs. I'll see the logs of the policy that successfully executed. All the API calls did successfully happen, so I'll still go and look at my computer record under extension attributes, and I can see that my Microsoft Entra ID group membership extension we've got all the values. It was able to detect that I'm part of all 3 of these groups. So now, based off that, I'm going to go and create a smart computer group. And as you saw, there was like a line for each of the groups, and it was saying, am I a member of that group or not? So in this case, I'm creating a smart computer group for Macs that the owner is part of the Entra ID group named Mac users. I am changing the operator from is to like, because is mean exact match, and like means contains. So if it contains that lines with this Mac users group and that the membership is set to true, that means that, okay, this Mac falls into that smart group where the owner is part of that Entra ID group. All right, so up next, I'm going to quickly review with you guys like each section of the script. This one is very simple. It just explains you what we basically did just now, create an extension attribute, how to do that, and how to create the API role in client, as well as it tells you to edit those variables at the beginning, which we did. After that, you've got the API authentication section. It reads automatically what is your Jamf Pro URL, and then once you've got that, your Jamf Pro URL, your client ID, your client secret, we are able, with those 3 components, to generate what is called an access token, an API access token, which is what enables the API calls to work with the permissions they require. Up next, we have the computer user email section. We first collect the serial number, which is then used in our first API call to collect basically, it's not going to collect all information for that computer. It's just going to collect the information under the user and location section of the computer. And after that, at line 92, we extract from this resulting information, we just extract the email value. We confirm that the email value is not empty, that there's actually an email in there. And then from that API call result, which is in JSON format, I'm also going to extract the Jamf computer ID because I'll need it later in another API call. The other section after that is the Entra ID group membership verification section. So in that section, we do something just to make sure there's no errors. We collect, like in Jamf Pro, every item, every object that you create has an ID. So each computer, they have an ID. Each extension attributes have an ID, including cloud identity providers. So just in case you have more than one cloud identity provider integration, or that you had one in the past and deleted it, I am collecting the cloud identity provider ID here to make sure, the one that's for Entra ID, to make sure that we are doing the right verification, using the right integration. And then after that, we loop through each of the groups that we predefine. And using the email that we retrieved earlier, we just verify, okay, is that email part of that group? Yes, no. And then it loops through each of the groups, and it stores that in a variable. Next thing is, so I just wanted to show that if you want to test those API calls, you can always do it by not necessarily using that script. You can go to your instance, the jamfcloud.com/API. You can, in this case, it uses the Jamf Pro API for my script, so you can do view for this one. And then this API call right here is the one to test the user membership. So it can be just interesting, to test it manually. So the section after we have retrieved all the group membership, the section after that is to update the extension attribute value. So basically, it's just an API call that's going to update the extension attribute and show like the different groups and if my user is member of them or not. After that, just a side note on the API, I initially created this script using the classic API. But as of Jamf Pro 11.15, like the computer's endpoint from the classic API is going to be, it's actually deprecated. And from the point it's deprecated, it's supported by Jamf for 1 year. So if you've got workflows like that, that uses the JSS resource, the classic API, just make sure to replace those API calls using the new computer inventory API endpoint. That's very important because actually the computer's classic endpoint is going to be deprecated probably in March 2026. So just a side note, and then at the end of the script, for security reason, like we saw earlier, after 60 seconds, the token expires anyways, but since we are done with doing API calls, I manually invalidate it, so it's a good practice when you have API scripts. All right, so what about mobile devices? So for mobile devices, of course, you can't run a script on mobile devices. So I created a script that would have to be run like on your Mac or on a server manually or on a schedule. And this script is simply going to loop through all of your mobile devices, collect the user and location information for each device, and then from that, it's going to extract the email. It's going to verify, is this email part of those predefined Entra ID groups that you define? And then it's going to shoot like an API call and update each of the mobile devices. So it can be run on your Mac, and it works very well as well for mobile devices. So that's pretty much it for the custom workflow using the API. Now, as of Jamf Pro 11.18, there's actually a native way of doing this with Jamf Pro, which is a bit different because I'll say this, the difference is in the workflow that we saw, you define the groups, so you only get group membership for those that you define. But with this, it's just going to give you all groups that a user is part of. So even if there's 100 groups, you will see like all 100, which is not a bad thing, but just it's pretty much the main difference here. So as of 11.18, the Cloud Identity Provider integration has added support for Microsoft Entra ID member of attribute mapping. So what that means is that you can just, in a very similar way, create an extension attribute, but the extension attribute is going to die for a little bit, but then this extension attribute can be used in smart groups. So to set up that new extension attribute, you need to put the data type to string. You need to choose the input type to directory service attribute mapping, and you need to specify, well, there's two values that you can put. So the first one for that extension attribute, the value we would put is member of .displayName. That's going to look for direct group membership, which is we discussed earlier. And then if you put transitive member of .displayName, that's going to look for like nested groups, you know, all groups that a user is member of, even like indirectly. And you gotta make sure to select in that extension attribute the allow attribute multiple values, because like I said, there will be like multiple values, multiple groups that are gonna show up in the extension attribute. Here's a quick video on how to do it. So you go to settings, computer management, extension attributes, and we can create a new one. I'll name this one Jamf's native Microsoft Entra ID group membership. The data type, I leave it to string. The inventory display in this case does not matter. I put it in extension attribute because it's more clean, but you can put it to whatever you want. And in my case, I put the directory service attribute to member of .displayName because I just want direct group membership in my case, in this example. I'll do the same thing for mobile devices. So in this time, it's under settings, device management, and extension attributes, and you do exactly the same thing. Nothing differs here. Perfect. So nice. And that's it, simple as that. Now, the extension attribute calculation, the way it works, depends as well on you checking that box for the collect user and location information from directory services. So every time there would be an inventory update, this extension attribute's value will get updated. So if I like remove myself from the IT team group in Entra ID, and I do a manual inventory update with the Jamf account and the terminal or the policy runs, then after that update inventory, only will I see that in the extension attribute value. IT team doesn't show up there anymore. Okay, other requirements, of course, you gotta be on 11.18. You gotta have Microsoft Entra ID configured as your cloud identity provider. Your group attribute mappings, if you keep them as default, should be good. Just make sure to use the test feature we saw earlier. And then if you want to have a direct group membership, you have to select the transitive membership lookups box in the cloud identity provider integration. And of course, you need Microsoft Entra ID users to be assigned to your computers and mobile devices under the use and location section. So now how can we create smart computer groups from those extension attribute values? It's a bit similar. So here I'm in Entra ID. I look at what groups I'm part of. I see that I'm part of the developer software, so I just copy that name. I'll go and look at my Mac, which has done an update inventory. I see that I have those infos here, and when I look at the Jamf's native Microsoft Entra ID, I see that developer software shows up here. So now let's create a smart group based off that. I'm going to give a clear name to my group. I'm going to add a criteria. I click on Show Advanced Criteria top right. Make sure you do that, because otherwise not all criteria show up. And I like to use Command F to find criteria quickly, I mean. And then I put the operator, I leave it to has mean contains. And then you simply put the exact name of the Entra ID group as it is written in Entra ID. Simple as that. So yeah, I'm gonna skip that, that's okay. So let's just look at some real world scenarios. So let's say I wanna deploy an app, let me just start that. So let's say I wanna deploy an app to the people that are, to the Macs, where the owner is part of the developer software Entra ID group. So I've got that group here, and then of course I'm not teaching you anything new here. It's very simple, you just go to whatever app you have here. In this case, it's the Jamf app catalog, Microsoft Visual Studio Code, and I'm gonna select my target group to member of developer software, and that's it, simple as that. Second thing, I'll also show an example in the App Store. So let's say I wanna deploy Xcode for my developers. I'm gonna edit, I'm gonna go in scope, and I'm not gonna use limitations. We don't like that anymore, we don't wanna do this. I'm really gonna use a computer group, macOS, developer software, and bam, that's it. So simple as that. Another example I wanted to show is with the blueprint. So to put it in context, in this scenario, I created a group in Microsoft Entra ID named External Storage Exception. So I've got that group in Entra ID. And here I'm creating a smart group for computers that are owned by users that are not members of the External Storage Exception group. So this smart group is for all computers where the owner is not part of that Entra ID group, actually. And so after that, I'm gonna head to blueprints. I'm gonna create that new blueprint to block external storages, except for my people that are part of the exception group in Entra ID. And I'll go ahead and select the disk management policy, external storage, disabled. I'll do add. And then I'll put the scope to this one. So you might ask, like, why not create like one blueprint that blocks USBs like for all Macs and another blueprint that allows it for the exception group? The thing is, with blueprints, at the moment they don't support in the scoping, they don't support exclusions, at least not yet. That should come up at some point. And the second thing is that if I had two blueprints and then they could conflict with each other. So that's why I'm preferring this method here of just blocking it for everybody except those people that are in my Entra ID group that I don't want it to be blocked for them. Final example is if I wanted the IT team to access, like just the IT team, people that are in the IT team Entra ID group, to be able to access the Talway, for example, and also beta macOS update. So I've got a restricted software here that blocks install macOS Talway. I'm doing it here just to show that we can use exclusions. So I'm putting it to all computers, and then I'm putting in the exclusion my member of IT team so that they're excluded. But I could have also done the reverse and just scope it directly to not member of IT team. Either way works. And then I'm creating a blueprint with the software update settings. And under there, I'm gonna go and do configure. I'm gonna do in beta updates, and I'll do never for the program enrollment. And then this time I don't have exclusion, so I have to scope it to my not member of IT team. So, all right, that's it for this quick example. So that's pretty much it. You know, here are the resources. Like I said earlier, on this GitHub page, You can scan it also. You will find the script for the computers. You'll find a script for the mobile devices. You'll find documentation guide on how to set up, whether it's with the custom workflow or with the Jamf natives option. You'll find all of this, and you'll find also those slides with the videos included in them in Keynote and PowerPoint format. So if you want to reach out to me, I'm available, on LinkedIn, on the MacAdmin Slack, however you want to reach out to me. Even after the session, we can discuss if you want. It will be my pleasure. So thank you, guys. Thank you so much. And I just want to give a shout out to my team at Amaris also, my manager, Benjamin Richard, who works really hard so that I can have this opportunity. I've got Tony Walter also with me from the team today. And of course, thank you so much to Jamf for this opportunity. So I hope you guys learned something. Thanks a lot. And I hope we have some time for Q&As.
Yeah, we have about 5 minutes almost, so if there are questions, please raise your hand and I will run the microphone to you. Don't be shy.
If you don't have questions, that means it's clear. It's perfect.
That's true.
In your practical experience, how long does it typically take for a group membership change in Entra to reflect into Jamf?
Sorry, can you speak just a bit louder? Sorry.
How long does it typically take for you to see an Entra group membership change reflect in Jamf using this method?
As soon as there's an update inventory. So it depends. So with the custom workflow, it's when the policy runs, right? With the script runs, and that's immediately. And so if you use like just the native way in Jamf Pro, as soon as there's inventory, so for Macs, there's that policy that's created by default in Jamf, which is an inventory update policy, and it runs once every day. So when that policy runs, it's immediately, as soon as it's done, that the extension attribute value is updated. Yeah.
All right, I'm going to
Perfect.
But yeah, let's have another round of applause for Philip.
Thank you.